Good morning. Continue to read my 2017 article on action criticism and theory for music education. Thoughts on the law, gatekeepers, and rerooting, which is a creative response to Randall Alsop's 2016 book, Remixing the Classroom. I'm on page 55 under the law. And I start with a long quote from George Santayana, 1911. A Californian whom I had recently the pleasure of meeting observed that, if the philosophers had lived among your mountains, their systems would have been different from what they are. Certainly, I should say, very different from what those systems are in the European genteel tradition has handed down since Socrates. For these systems are egotistical. Directly or indirectly, they are anthropocentric and inspired by the conceited notion that man, or human reason, or the human distinction between good and evil, is the center and pivot of the universe. That is what the mountains and the woods should make you at last ashamed to assert. End quote. Early in Remixing the Classroom, Alsop shares Kafka's 1915 existential parable, Before the Law. The law, revisited throughout the book, provides an essential metaphor for understanding the author's open philosophy of music education. This open philosophy is about opening the gates of the law. John Dewey quote seems appropriate since Remixing the Classroom uses Deweyan theory extensively. Discussing history from a social standpoint, Dewey writes, quote, "But unless the hero is treated in relation to the community life behind him that he sums up and directs, there is danger that history will reduce itself to a mere exciting story." John Dewey quote. End quote. I believe this is also true for music education. Unless it is rooted in community life, there is danger that music education will reduce itself to a mere exciting story. The possibility of agency is exciting, but if that agency doesn't have a rooted support of a living community, it is a mere exciting story. Agents must fight against the law of schooling. True, but they must also fight against the easy answers of another law, namely industrial music, promoting unsustainable neoliberal ideology for economic gain, whatever the cost to actual communities. Looking to his relation to the community life behind him, my analysis of the parable illuminates a possibility for the man from the country and music education. In using Kafka's parable, I join a large body of scholarship, mostly in legal philosophy. Kafka earned a doctorate of laws from Prague University in 1906 and published Before the Law in a collection called A Country Doctor in 1919. What is the law? Laws are collections of rules and regulations and policies enforced by an institution, often the state. In other words, the law involves the institutionalization of values. For instance, refraining from murder is a common value, and a law against murder, with subsequent punishments for breaking the law, represents the institutionalization of that value. The power of the law is tied to the institution's ability to enforce the law. In Remixing the Classroom, the law refers to admittance to an institution, the university. In some ways, referring to the law as institutionalized music education is paradoxical. But this law has progressive history, a guiding story, as do courts and prisons in liberal democracies. Some current universities date to the Middle Ages and find their institutional and ideological origins in Plato's Academy and Aristotle's Lyceum. Universities have, over time, served increasingly diverse and open to women, people of color, etc. roles in an opening society. The power of the law and institution to function as the law, enforceable rights, begins and possibly ends with denying admittance. But the gatekeeper says that he cannot grant him admittance right now. Perhaps the gatekeeper's right now is similar to today's wait lists. Or perhaps the gatekeeper is being cunning and cruel, saying right now might keep the man of the country, waiting and hoping, rather than taking revolutionary action, revolting, tearing down the walls, and destroying the institution. A very real and observable possibility in early 20th century Europe, and maybe increasingly a possibility today. Stop right there. Remember January 6th, right? Tearing down the walls. Go back to the reading. It may be that universities use right now as a way to assert more power of punishment than they actually have. States have armies and police forces. Universities have rejection letters. Waitlist can draw out the pang of their punishment. Later, Kafka writes, the gate of the law is open, as always. And the man from the country thinks the law should be accessible to everyone at all times. The gatekeeper doesn't correct the man from the country. Kafka seems to distinguish open from accessible. Is the open philosophy open like a chain-locked door to peer through, or accessible to enter? Are there ways an open philosophy is exclusionary? All university institutions and music education teacher training programs housed in these institutions are inaccessible to most people. Many programs exclude musicians who music outside of acceptable classical norms. But even if the programs were open to additional musical genres, as an institution, the university would set limits to entrance. The institution may open itself to MC and DJ artists this year, and next year to bluegrass experts. But there will always be genres that function beyond the institution, ones openers haven't yet gotten to. The institution, by its nature, is conservative, a conservatory of types, conserving what it understands, even when trying to understand new knowledges, to eventually institutionalize and conserve. Even open to all genres, universities exclude based on expertise. We want expert mariachi or taiko or guitar or gamelan musicians to enter the gate. ALSUP uses the law to challenge elite North American universities, and ALSUP's training took place at one of these institutions, Northwestern. I extend this challenge by challenging all music education institutions. All gates and all laws deserve scrutiny. As a process, institutionalization, the very existence of the gates and the law, leads to less and not more diversity. I was educated at Clarion University of Pennsylvania, which is not an elite music education institution. When I studied at Clarion, admittance, Gate 1, was comparatively easy, but much of the curriculum, Gate 2, was similar. While I attended, Clarion first applied for and was granted admittance to the National Association of Schools of Music, NASM. In the time since my graduation, attendance declined, and the long-running music education department, serving mostly rural schools in western and central PA, was recently disestablished. Music education seems to be the institutionalization of a value. Music teaching and learning, transmitting music from one generation to the next, is a good thing to do, so good that people have done it since before recorded history without schooling. For around 200 years, the value has been institutionalized in schools, and over time, progress, meliorism, in university music teacher training programs. If the experience of Clarion is an example, institutionalization, Clarion, as a music teacher training program, seeks further institutionalization, NASM accreditation. And since schools are about generating dropouts, according to Prakash Esteva, it is only rational that on the institutional level, Clarion's music education program would eventually become a dropout. Institutionalization abhors diversity. Everybody yearns to attend an elite institution. So that's that section. I'll start with opening to what on page 58 when I return. But yeah, there we go. There we go. This is the direction of institutionalization, destruction of diversity. Think about all the languages that as soon as they institutionalized them, they preserved all these indigenous languages at universities on recordings. And then finally, the community's like, oh, good. You know, we were down to 5-10 people that spoke this language. We could let it die, and then it dies. Think about all the musics of all the immigrant peoples in the 19th century. Their kids go to school and they don't know any of the songs. The old Hungarian, Polish, German, Italian, West African, North African, Asian. Those songs gone, right? What diversity lost to institutionalization. Have a good day.